What if it was ADHD the entire time and nobody actually picked it up? For most of my life, I've always been kind of overly anxious, I guess. I got overwhelmed pretty easily, constantly overthinking things. Like I've always been like that. And I went to the doctor and they told me that I had anxiety. Like a lot of women, I was told I was diagnosed actually with anxiety and depression. And that's because, like, I had the racing thoughts, like, my brain just kept going and going and going. I had a hard time, like, focusing on one task at a time, and it all pinpointed actually directly at anxiety, and I even kinda had, like, done the testing with the doctor, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you have some anxiety and depression." But the problem is that the treatments that they kept giving me, they were not helping. And then I started probably a year or two ago. We started researching a little bit more about anxiety and depression in women. And my husband had ran across this thing about women that had ADHD and how the symptoms of ADHD in women presented differently than it does in men. And a lot of women actually that have ADHD, they're misdiagnosed because they are told they have anxiety. It actually turns out that ADHD is misdiagnosed in a lot of women. That's because women present differently. I began to kind of like reflect on my life and what that looked like. Like I would forget small things. I had a hard time like organizing everything, keeping everything organized. I didn't have a whole lot of like emotional dysregulation, but maybe I did and I just didn't recognize it. I didn't have like a bunch of highs and lows or anything like that. I did have some, like, I did really well in school, like, I was super intelligent. The biggest thing was like I was constantly going on the inside and running out of steam on the outside, basically. I could go for a really long time and do things like lots of tasks, get things accomplished, but I would mentally be so exhausted by like five tasks. I need to take a nap. And it's because my brain kept going and going and going and going and going. About 2 weeks ago, my husband and I, we were having this conversation, and he's like, "Hey, if you're struggling because, I'm starting a new career, like the kids are coming this summer." And truthfully, I just wanted to know what really was going on with my head because none of the medications I'd ever tried for anxiety really truthfully ever worked. They did kind of like make me lower. I can't really explain that other than just like lower, but my brain kept going and going no matter what. I was never truly calm. My husband was like, "Hey, why don't you find somebody and go and talk to them and see what they think?" And that's exactly what I did. I went and saw this lady that specializes in ADHD, particularly in women. Also, she's a trauma informed coach as well, or a trauma informed therapist. We had a really good connection, and she did all the testing that she needed to do. She had my husband fill out a bunch of paperwork as well. And on Friday, which was yesterday, actually, she called me and she's like, "Kayla, without a doubt, you definitely have ADHD." So yesterday, we obviously, like we had talked before, we had talked on Tuesday or after, yeah, Tuesday after my like initial meeting with her. And during my meeting, she's like, "Yeah, your signs definitely point to, a woman that has been misdiagnosed and you actually have ADHD." But she had to wait till she got the paperwork to actually, from my husband to actually say, "Hey, you really do have this." Yesterday on Friday, I was officially diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And I'm going to be very honest, I'm still a little pissed about it because I had been to my primary care doctors throughout the years. I was in therapy when I was a child. I like school, all these things, and I still can't understand how they could have misdiagnosed it, but they did. That's why none of the medications for anxiety really ever worked for me, is because it wasn't a diagnosis that I actually had, but I actually had ADHD. And even funnier is that the diagnosis, even though it's made me a little, 'cause not really that I'm angry about it. I'm angry because I didn't know sooner. Because if I would have known sooner that I actually had ADHD, then I could have figured out ways to manage it prior to this and not just like take a bunch of medications. And my life could have been completely different. But that's okay. That's just life. Here I am with this new diagnosis. And I knew that it was going to be happening on Friday. I knew I probably already had it just based on all the symptoms and signs and all the videos that I had watched about ADHD and just how ADHD internalizes in women. For women, we internalize, for me, I actually internalize everything. And what that actually means is that my brain goes 200 miles a minute. It's like a computer screen. And if you look at a computer screen and you have one browser open, that's normal. But for me, because I have ADHD, I have this browser open and then I have 25,000 tabs open at the same time. I'm constantly moving tab to tab to tab to tab. And I don't just have one thought at a time, I have hundreds of thoughts at a time. And that was apparently anxiety, but now we know that it's ADHD. Over the past week, with learning this, thinking this was going to be my diagnosis on Friday, I have been doing some intense studying on attention deficit disorder in women and how that affects us and things that I can do to help me have more focus, medications that I could take, over the counter medications like vitamins that will help, just because I don't want to be one of these people that have to rely on medication, prescription medication for the rest of my days to have a full productive life. I struggle mostly with focus, and like my husband will say, well, you have this habit of, leaving the water running in the sink. And I do. I think it's the background noise for me. And it's also why I like music, because if there is something playing in the background, whether it is a TV or music or water running, it helps me focus because I can complete the tasks that I need to complete instead of leaving the refrigerator door open, 5 drawers open, the water running, forgetting things. I've started using different apps on my phone. One of my apps actually that I fell in love with right now is it's Forest. And it's you put it on your phone and you grow a tree. You don't touch your phone. If you do, your tree dies. I've been using the tree during working hours to put the tree on and completely just focus and leave my phone alone without having to pick it up and let the tree grow. Also creating a schedule. With Apparently with ADHD, we if with people that have, or maybe just me, I don't know, if you have attention deficit hyperactive disorder, you have this habit, or I do, that I bounce from task to task to task without completing them. One of the things I have done is I've created a schedule, like a very, not like a super strict schedule, but a schedule that I have to physically push the button on my phone to say, hey, I completed that task that I need to complete today. And that's been helping me be like remembering things that I needed to do, but also at the same time, it is holding me accountable to make sure that I'm able to complete the tasks that I need. And I'm really in love with this tree app because I'm growing a forest and I'm not spending as much time on my phone. For me, I love to scroll on TikTok. Like, I'm a TikTok addict. Like, I love to scroll. I get dopamine from scrolling through TikTok and watching people's videos. And I really haven't been on TikTok really all this week. I've been focusing on work and the podcast and videos and scripting. I literally wrote this week 59 scripts for topics that I wanted to talk about and like edited them. That was pretty cool. That was an accomplishment. And I was also able to get my whole house clean within 2 hours instead of 12. That is also another accomplishment. We'll take that. I think for me, that getting evaluating and getting this diagnosis of ADHD, I think this is going to be a turning point for me. I think because it has now opened doors for me and opportunities, and it has actually given me a real diagnosis, and I'm